Shalom WJC family. It's time for our weekly Torah Talk. This week in Shul, we will be reading Parshat Chayei Sarah, beautiful love story between Isaac and Rebekah. What I want to actually highlight in this talk is a countercultural notion. We speak a lot right now about living in the moment, being present in every moment, being mindful in every moment, appreciating the present for what it is, letting go of the past, and not worrying too much about the future. And this is good advice, and there is a lot of that advice in Judaism also. However, today I want to highlight a countercultural idea, something equally important, is that as much as we need to live in and appreciate every moment, we also should recognize that we're part of a huge timeline, a huge project, whether we see that as the human project of God's creation, or whether we see that as the Jewish project of God's creation, starting with Abraham and Sarah and going all the way until now. And it's that idea of appreciating the long term that I think I want to highlight today, because sometimes the moments aren't good. I know even when we're in pain, even when we are upset, even when we're upset by the things going on in the world, we need to live in that moment and recognize it, and also recognize that we're part of a much longer project, and this moment of pain is not all there is in the world. So how do we see this in the Parsha? After Abraham's servant goes and brings Rebekah back from Abraham's hometown, there's a very short piece of text that is actually the meeting of Isaac and Rebekah. And I'm going to read it. It's just 4 verses, and they're so beautiful. So Isaac had just come back from the vicinity of Be'er Lachai Ro'i, for he was settled in the region of the Negev. Interesting, he goes to Be'er Lachai Ro'i. That's the last place we saw his brother Ishmael and Hagar. So maybe after Sarah died, he needed a little family comfort. He went to visit his exiled brother. Just interesting side note. And Isaac went out walking in the field toward evening, and looking up, he saw camels approaching. Raising her eyes, Rebekah saw Isaac, and she alighted from her camel. And she said to the servant, "Who is this man walking in the field toward us?" And the servant says, "That is my master." So she took a veil and covered herself. The servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. Isaac then brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah, and he took Rebekah to wife. Isaac loved her, v'ye'ehaveha, and found comfort from his mother's death. So many beautiful things about living beyond the moment in that passage. First of all, this is the first use we see of love, ahava, between two people. Other relationships haven't been described that way in the Torah. Something divine in this romantic love, and that brings comfort from the death of his mother. In other words, something about the generational chain going forward is comforting. Doesn't mean he's not upset in the moment about his mother's passing, Sarah's passing, but it also means that there's a recognition of something longer, something wider. So too, in the act of veiling herself, which is what I really want to focus on, we describe this at the Bidekin ceremony in a Jewish wedding as the veiling of the bride. Will often make reference to this episode. Right? You would think that in the moment of the wedding, just as in the moment of meeting her intended, especially a beautiful woman like Rebekah, the last thing she would want to do is put on a veil, right? She should be fixing her hair and doing her makeup, right? She wants to be impressive. First impressions are important. But it's like Rebekah's sending a message. No. This is just a moment. Just like a wedding is just a moment. But the real challenge and blessing of the relationship of a marriage, whether it's Rebekah and Isaac's or one that we're privileged to be a part of, is that it's not about the moment, is that it's a long-term project, and it's connected to the generations of our family that came before us, and God willing, the generations of our family that will come after us. And so the veiling act itself is almost saying, like, hold on, take a beat. This is just a moment, and we're going to have to see beneath how pretty I might look today or how handsome you might be. There's lots of midrashim about how gorgeous Isaac is, that he looks like she mistakes him for the archangel Gabriel because he's so strong and Gabriel's strong. That's just a moment. And thirdly, there's a midrash on this veiling that says that two women veil themselves and then give birth to twins. We have Rebecca, who veils herself and gives birth famously to Jacob and Esau. And we have Tamar in the story of Judah, Judah's daughter-in-law. We'll read about her in a couple of parshiot as an interjection into the Joseph story. And Tamar veils herself, and she gives birth to twins, Peretz and Zerach. So, Divrei Yirmiyahu Lo, who's a rabbi in the 1800s in Hungary, he looks at this midrash and says, I don't get it. What's the big deal about veiling and twins? What's the connection? He says the twins of Rivka alluded to civil war between brothers. So we know Jacob and Esau are going to have a tough relationship for a lot of years before they make peace. Whereas the twins of Tamar allude to peace. Why? Not so much because of the relationship between Peretz and Zerach, but Tamar's line leads to King David, and King David's line will lead to the Mashiach, the Sar Shalom, the Prince of Peace, and so from her twins come peace. So what's that got to do with veiling? Divrei Yirmiyahu says both situations, war and future peace, are veiled. We can't always know in the moment if events are going to lead to war, negativity, violence, or if they're going to lead to peace. Sometimes they're veiled from us because we have to be involved in pushing the needle towards peace. Sometimes things are just beyond our control. So in the moment, things are veiled, but in the future, they're still part of this longer continuum. It ultimately says it will be up to God, says Divrei Yirmiyahu, when the veil will be removed. When the veil is removed for war, so too the veil will be removed from peace. I think he's talking maybe about some kind of, the great war that's going to become before the Mashiach. But to speak it more simply, often we have to see the conflict arise before we can address it and do our job, which is to bring peace. And so, on the one hand, we do need to live in moments. That is, I'm not saying it's not good advice. I'm saying it's not the only advice. And especially moments like these, when there's so much in the world that is troubling us, maybe in your life that's troubling you, maybe your family's dealing with an illness or job loss or who knows what. And if you're having any of these issues, of course, we're always here to talk. But also, we recognize it's just a moment. And God willing, the veil will be removed and a beautiful future will be revealed for you and for all of humanity. And we shouldn't forget our job as the descendants, as the progeny of Rebecca, as the progeny of Abraham and Sarah, as the progeny spiritually of Tamar, if not directly, that our job is to be the ones who push for peace. Right? So let's not get too lost in the moment. Let's not get too caught up in the moment. Let's not be afraid to be a little countercultural, to say there is a longer story here. And it comes up, right? We talk about the arc of history or whatever it may be. But let's embrace it. Let's believe it. And let's do our part to push that greater story towards peace, whatever veil is over events now. And sometimes it's not even a veil. We see war around us. We see pain around us. We see terror. Our job is to, as that veil is removed and we see the negatives, to address them and bring about the peace. May it come speedily in our days. And in the meantime, we'll wish you a Shabbat Shalom. May you enjoy the peace of Shabbat.